Welcome to the Center for Art in Woods monthly installment of Object Lesson. My name is Nava Milliken. I'm the director for the Center for Art in Wood, and so thrilled to welcome you on this gorgeous fall day. Thank you for opening your weekend with us at the center. All right. I have a few things to mention by way of introduction before we get started. First of all, you are invited to activate the live transcription and captioning. If you like, you can do so by clicking on the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer, and I think it's on the side of your screen if you're, or at the top if you're on a tablet. And then you'll be able to read a transcript of the discussion as it commences. I also want to invite us all to take a moment to recognize that the Center for Art in Wood is sited on the unceded territory of the Lenni Lenape people, who were and continue to be active stewards of these lands. We humbly recognize and express our gratitude to those whose territory on which we work. And we at the Center for Art in Wood work to dismantle ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and to recognize the hundreds of Indigenous nations who continue to resist, live, and uphold their sacred presence on their lands. Thank you. And so this is October's object lesson. We have with us a guest from Richmond, Virginia, named Scott Braun. And before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to give you a little bit of background about Object Lesson. It is now 3 years, I believe, in practice, which seems unbelievable to me. But Object Lesson is a salon series that focuses on the Center for Art in Wood's permanent collection of artworks, which now numbers over 1,200. Most of the artworks in the center's permanent collection are available to view here at the center in our open display area, or you can access the entire collection online at the center's website. And so we are here for you to answer any questions you might have, and we encourage you to look deeply into the document and treasury that is the center's permanent collection. So for this month, our speaker is Scott Braun, who is a visual artist, educator, and socio-political activist, whose interactive performances, sculptures, and installations engage participants in an exploration of self in the context of society. Scott has been the artist in residence at Anderson Ranch in Colorado and at Haystack in Maine, and his work has been exhibited in solo and group exhibitions at the Queens Museum, Sideshow Gallery, the Rosenthal Library, Benton Nyce Gallery, Pei-Ling Chen Sculpture Garden at Savannah College of Art and Design, the Rye Arts Center Gallery, and the American University Museum. Scott's current endeavor, the Decency Project, draws upon his extensive background in woodworking and social practice, using craft and labor as a conduit for creating community. The project has traveled from Richmond, Virginia to Washington, D.C. and New York, New York, and is featured in the documentary series, The Line That Divides Us. The Decency Project is here in Philadelphia this weekend and was performed here at the Center for Art in Wood today, and tomorrow will be at Love Park at City Hall in Philadelphia. And you can meet Scott there in person. If you missed that opportunity, you can also catch him this fall at the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, Colorado. Dates to be announced, I think. Scott has worked professionally as a musician, a spoken word performer, a furniture designer and maker, a visual artist, and an educator. He has served as lecturer in sculpture at Yale School of Art, faculty at the New School of Interior Design, the New York School of Interior Design, and he's currently the assistant professor in the Craft and Material Studies Department at VCU Arts in Richmond, Virginia. He holds a bachelor's degree in music from the Berklee College of Music in Boston and an MFA in studio art and social practice from Queens College, the City University of New York in New York City. He has also served on the board of the Furniture Society, which is how I know him, and I'm so grateful and honored and happy to call upon my friend Scott Braun to speak to us today. Scott, it's all yours. Take it away.
I should start by unmuting. Or really, I should start by thanking Katie and Karen and Sam downstairs for all of your help today and tomorrow. This has been really great. And Nava, my life is richer because you exist. Thank you so, so much. Hi, and welcome. I'm here to talk about some objects, and we'll probably start a little bit slow and then roll downhill like a snowball with arms and legs sticking out of it. The first object, before I share my screen, I'm going to show you. I should show you them both in person so you get a sense of scale, and then we'll switch to looking at them on pictures. So I don't know if anybody on here knows Alf Sharp, but I'm wearing his gloves. So this is a Tommy Simpson piece called House of Errors, with a little bit of a pun involved, which we can get into in a few. And it's bigger than my head. Those are lips. Okay, and this, change this back now, is a little Katie Hudnall tabletop. Oops, we're not quite far enough away to get the whole thing, but it's a little set of stairs. Yes, we can move this wherever we want. All right, so I'm going to switch now. Okay, gloves are off. So let's start by talking about Tommy. Actually, let's start before we do that. So I like to think about things in context. I like to think specifically about canonical arcs. I think about history in terms of arcs, that there are just millions of arcs of history going through time, intersecting and banging into each other and not intersecting at all. And I have a tendency to scare the hell out of my students by telling them that our responsibility as contemporary artists is to understand our own arc, whatever canonical arc we may be working in, figure out what it is that we wish to contribute to it and move it forward into history. So in beginning this endeavor, I went looking for two pieces, hoping to find two things along a canonical arc. And I chose two pieces that I thought were on the same canonical arc. I'm not sure I 100% still believe that, but they're definitely related. So let's start then with that thought. I'm going to share my screen now. Great. So here's Tommy's piece. This is Tommy Simpson. I think in a sort of quick formal analysis, we can see the cyclopean head with a single eye. We can see that the word "oops" is inscribed in the little. Oh, you can see it pretty clearly. Okay. We can see that Tommy's immediately trying to give us some humor. I maybe less so now that I'm seeing it in person, but my first read was immediately that Tommy's using wood in this case more for color than for sort of, I don't know, love of material or grain or that kind of thing. I'm moving this around. I'm sorry that we're not in the same room. But if you look at the slots along the roof, again, he's playing with color to my mind. And then also to my mind, there's an inescapable Mark Newson reference in the materials of the head or the house. But we've got reference to home. We've got reference to anthropomorphic tendency or qualities. And clearly there's some sort of effort at humor. can you see? It's hard to see in the picture. The word errors, this piece is called The House of Errors. The word errors is written capital E-R, small r, capital O, small r-s. So at a glance, one will see House of Eros. We're going to talk a little bit about that type of thing in Tommy's work as we go. So I'm going to move forward from the formal here. All right. So Tommy is most commonly compared, I think, to H.C. Westerman. We're not moving. Hold on. Let me click in the right things. There we go. Excuse me. Tommy is often compared to H.C. Westerman. I think at a glance, it's fairly obvious why in these two pieces. We have the same cyclopean head. We have the same kind of humorous tone to the work. I would argue that Westerman is using his humor as a mask for a much darker critique of culture and society. We're going to kind of move through, and I'll talk more about where I think Tommy fits. I think formally, sure, of course, Westerman. I think mature or conceptually, I'm not sure I'm really buying it. The other person who Tommy is compared to very frequently is Paul Klee, the painter. And I kind of want to make the same argument. Tommy loves to play with color. Tommy loves to play with these faces, with the way in which he uses faces in the work, as Klee does. But that said, I think that Klee is a much more serious formalist and is deeply investigating cubism that he is resisting, and he's a serious formalist where Tommy maybe is trying to bring a whole lot more joy to the table than formal rigidity. So let's look at a little bit more of Tommy's work to help us understand that in context. Here is a chair called the Carpenter's chair. We see a lot of reference to tools in Tommy's work. We see a bunch of them here. In case we can't get close enough, we've got a hammer, we've got a compass, a pencil, a ruler, etc. These are screws. Again, we see the home. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that is. So I'm going to ignore it for now. So there's also a lot of kind of comedy in the writing on the piece. I still think that he's using wood less as wood and more as texture and color. And more than anything, celebrating his joy of making and his joy of making for a place. Tommy, I think maybe more than Westerman. Westerman often was referred to as an outsider artist, but if Robert Storr is writing about you, you ain't outside anything. I think Tommy fits more in that outsider category. He's much more influenced by folk art. No, that's not true. I think he fits better in folk art, to my mind. But as I kept moving, I wanted to throw in one last thing about the formal aspects of Tommy's work. Tommy uses the word whimsy on his website, which surprises me. I know so many artists, myself included, who really bristle at that word and the implication that we're doing anything on a whim. But I also think it kind of suits him, and it helps him mask a different type of instead of the darkness of Westerman or the formalism of Klee. I think Tommy has this kind of nihilistic joy that's naughty. He likes to be kind of a naughty boy, and so as I move through some of his other work, I look at a formal, a small sculpture called Gift of Time, and we see this sort of it's still playful, it's still kind of childlike and cartoonish, but it also gets childish a little bit. And there's this kind of sense of I snuck some boobs in there, and I'm not really hiding that. So there's this other kind of, I still find it really joyful, but it's a different flavor of I'm going to stay with the word dark for now. Anyway, when I look at this kind of work, this piece to me looks really, let's not say timeless, but let's say sort of anywhere in the 20th century. When I start thinking about nihilistic joy, I start thinking about the Dadaists. And the place I immediately go to is Raoul Hausmann. And this is a piece from 1920 called The Spirit of Our Time. Again, we've got a use of wood that doesn't necessarily have to be wood. It's a texture and a color. We have a lot of found objects that are placed in where Tommy might be more likely to make those objects. But the spirit is the same to me. And so as I move more into Tommy's sculpture, I happened on this piece called Bear on Wheels. And this sort of exemplifies everything that I'm saying. There's these, I'm going directly back to the turn of the 20th century and abstract painters and the use of geometric line, the use of spare line, which is something you don't see in Tommy's work very often. There are literal, almost drawings, gestures of drawing, and even more so, that kind of childish play of boobs and willies all through the work. And I think this piece is a lot more colorful than it shows on the screen, but I don't want to dwell on it. What I do want to dwell on for just a moment is that this piece is on wheels. It caught my eye. Let's move on. So where I did go from this, and I start thinking about gestural line and sort of post-abstraction, is to Giacometti's early sculptures in the 30s. And so we've got these wooden abstracted lines and geometric shapes all kind of intermingling in a Kandinskian, is that a word, way, and clear predecessor to Calder in some of the more spare Giacometti pieces. These are both from the early 30s. Where I really go when I think of Tommy is to the surrealist painters, Francis Picabia. The color, the use of line, the use of filling all the space, the kind of joyful silliness, and not quite so nihilistic as the Dadaists. But the place where the work for me crosses into Katie Hudnall territory is where I see the influence of Quentin Blake, who was the illustrator for all of Roald Dahl's books. I think that the overlap here is all of the sort of joy and the love of existence, all of the fill everything with actionable, lots of things are happening. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of space filling that Tommy likes to play with. But then there's also just that kind of clean-spirited wonder, right? If I were to try to define the joys between Tommy and Katie for me is all about wonder and like marveling at everything in the world. So let's kind of move into Katie a little bit and move away from Tommy, but maybe, I don't remember if we come back. Well, we may never come back. So Katie in this case is using material for color and texture. These are little bits of plaster lath or lath that is used for plaster. so those pieces are being used kind of unmolested, right? We're keeping the surface of those as they were. I'm gonna, no, this is a good enough picture. But there are some classic Katie moves in here. The use of lath actually goes through Katie's work for a long time. The black and white paint and marker in the opposite color to create some kind of a scale-like texture. We'll talk more about this as we get into it, but Katie has a much finer use of line than we see in Tommy's work or Roald Dahl's, I'm sorry, or Quentin Blake's drawings. We're on wheels again. We're on wheels again. This is not the only staircase that Katie has done. There was a series of small tabletop experiments. They read to me as sketches and Katie playing, which kind of becomes more evident when we look deeper at Katie's work. We're on wheels again. When we look at Katie's drawings, I think we really begin to get a sense of Katie, more so than most of the artists that I'm aware of. The spirit in Katie's drawings and the spirit of Katie's three-dimensional sculptural work are so much the same. So kind of all of the everything that I get from Katie's work, I get it from the drawings. And I say that not just as someone who has one. Thanks, Katie, for the wedding gift. But here we begin to see I wish I could blow this up. We'll see it bigger later. Katie loves to draw wood grain on things, and maybe even specifically wood. Here are the scales that we're talking about that we keep seeing. I don't think Katie's ever done a staircase with an actual rail on it, but this rail looks like many of the things we see showing up in a lot of Katie's other work. We're on wheels again. Okay, the person that I always think of when I think of Katie's drawings is Shel Silverstein. There's that economy of line that is just, there's nothing here that doesn't need to be. And even when Katie's getting busy, I feel that way. Every line is important to the body. I threw this picture in here because I think if there is a drawing that just absolutely fills almost every bit of what Katie has spent decades doing, it's this drawing. The crazy rickety random stand, the telescoping body, the scales, the umbrella mechanisms, and well, straight up umbrellas, the sort of kinetic nature of the whole thing. It's all here, except for the wheels. Okay, I feel better. Okay, full disclosure, I don't really remember why I put this here. Oh, I remember why. Look at this base. Look at, just let's take note of this base, put a pin in it, hold on to it. Let's not forget we saw it. Now, I've known Katie for a really long time. And the first piece that I actually remember Katie making or showing in any way that I felt present for it was these experiments. I think she called them studies. I remember talking with young Katie about a fascination for the mechanism of an umbrella. I think that it was investigating the mechanism of the umbrella that we found ourselves watching Katie play with spider legs and gesticulatable spider legs for years. The mechanism to open the umbrella being the surprise of opening the, having to open the cabinet in order to get the umbrella to open. That becomes a really sort of quintessential Katie thing. There's always a surprise when you open a cabinet. Again, wonder and marveling at the world. And it's also where we begin to see hints that generally more black and white Katie is going to get real colorful when you look inside. But, oh, no, okay. So then from here, this was a study for a piece that she did, I believe, for or about her parents, but it's a his and hers cabinets that features that base that we were looking at earlier, that we put a pin in, the umbrellas, the joyful surprise of what happens when we open the cabinets, and wheels. Now, I can't look at all these pieces and not go all the way back to Duchamp. I don't know how to not do that. So, and then when I begin to kind of take note of the fact that I'm beginning to grow a little obsessive about the wheels, how do I not then go from here to here? There's this similar, I would argue that Duchamp has more of that nya joy that Tommy kind of brings us. There's a whole lot of that, look what I'm doing, and embracing it, right? That Katie maybe isn't doing, but the spirit of that joy and wonder of I'm standing in my kitchen, what if I throw this bicycle wheel on that stool that is the myth of this piece? That's there clearly to me. Okay, so Katie plays around here. This is much more clear of where Katie likes to make things out of wood and then paint them and then paint the wood back on. And really kind of, I love Katie's little studies. These lovely little doodads. I think this is very small tabletop size as well. We're on wheels again. And we're still on wheels. And even when we're not on wheels, we look like we're on wheels. And now we're doing Dadaistic found object sculpture on wheels, on pedestals, and I'm going back to Giacometti. And I don't know what to do with that yet, but I go back to Katie, and I think that we're still on wheels, and I want to take note of the fact that I keep seeing this circle show up, so that even if we weren't on wheels, and in this case the wheels kind of go in the wrong direction to really roll per se, except that it's like a compass, we still have this wheel. And that's when I began to notice that I think 99% of the work that Katie's ever done has a circle hole or a window in it. And even as we move into, sort of Katie getting further sophisticated, to my mind, we still get the hole, we still get the wheel. We're getting really fun with the drawing because we're starting to see joinery show up, and the telescoping contraptions are in full effect. That they have been since the beginning. But anyway, I need to stay ahead of you. Sorry. All right. When we open this cabinet, now we're really into the great big surprise. To my mind, I imagine Katie kind of noticing or beginning to bring in some of her peers. And I can't help but think of Jenna Goldberg and Sarah Martin when I open this cabinet. And it's it's a lovely homage to me. I think it's really, just a more joy, more wonder, more wheels, more circles, more laugh, more circles, more color when I open it up. I'm getting obsessed with the wheels, and I can't stop myself. And now I'm thinking about Jean Tinguely in a fragment from Homage to New York in 1960, and I'm thinking about Robert Breer's homage to John Tingley's Homage to New York in the same year, and I want to know what's going on. And is it that we're American and we can't stop our love affair with the automobile? Is it that we can't get over what Kandinsky did to and for us forever? And I remember that even when Katie I think about the irony that when Katie is finally told or asked to make a ball, it's not round. This piece is here in the show that's currently on Out of Bounds. Thank you. Sorry, the Out of Bounds show that's currently on display here at the center. But so I can't stop with the wheels now and the circles, and I start thinking about my own heroes, and if I'm willing to let go that it must be a wheel, I think about the fact that one of my favorite design heroes is Carlo Bugatti, and I have never seen a Carlo Bugatti piece without a mandala present in the work, and I've seen hundreds. He's really one of my heroes. And if we're willing to accept the mandala as a stand-in for the wheel, then we can jump around to Lee Bonteque did it for decades, and Sarah Z is still doing it, and I start to wonder, well, how long ago did this start? Do we have to go back to Virgil? So then I start to think about the giants of our little sort of craft furniture, let's call it wood world. And I think about another one of my favorite superheroes, Michael Cooper. And has there ever been a greater homage to the wheel than this freaking masterpiece? Soapbox Derby from, oh God, Michael, I think it's 1975, but somewhere around there. This is among our greatest masterpieces to my mind. But even contemporarily, if I look at Yuri Kobayashi looking at Saul LeWitt and saying, well, the hell with that, I'm gonna make him round. And we're getting crazy and completely contemporarily, but moving, fully into the design world. We have kind of a new star in our midst. Jomo Tariku's work is being celebrated all over the place, and rightly so. Jomo is taking the Ashanti stool form and bringing that kind of forward to where we are today. And when I put this picture in my folder of throwing slides in, and immediately remembered that horrific trend that has not ended of mediocre interior designers buying lots of 18th century generic African wheels and putting them on stands as art. And that then brings me to the thank God it's over, I want to be steampunk trend of designers buying at crazy prices old lumber carts and putting them in people's living rooms. But if once I'm in the design world, I start to think about the giants of design, and even Ron Arad is bringing the wheel into a contemporary. Well, this isn't contemporary anymore, but you know what I'm saying. It's in our era, and I don't know where I've gone, and I come all the way back to Katie. And I wonder how the wheel has become so present in my own mind, and then I put it all away and realized that I've joined this club, and I don't know how the hell that happened. And that's what I wanted to tell you today. Thanks for listening to me. I'm going to unshare.
Thank you so much, Scott. This has been such a journey. Thank you for taking us through the world of 20th century to 21st century art and design.
Through the eyes of the wheel.
Right. I mean, I think it's no surprise to hear that the circle continues to fascinate the human mind and continues to be a challenge for human achievement, because it is still viewed as the perfect unending form, platonically, but also providing a lot of inspiration for spiritual practice among cultures around the world. And I think there's something very interesting about if we separate this idea of the wheel from the circular form and think about mobility. I think there's really something to mind there.
Particularly, I would throw in half my day today involved conversations that touched on either former displacement or coming displacement, right? Whether we were talking about gentrification or climate change or just the sort of inherent mobility that's coming and has been in displacement of one form or another.
Yes, there's a lot to think about there. Also, I would not have drawn the connection between Tommy Simpson and Hans Bellmer, for example. And he was the Swiss Dadaist who created those doll forms that were all about disassembling the body in response to the violence of the First World War, but creating these recognizable anthropomorphic forms that he could, you know, portray violence enacted upon them as a way of deflecting or representing actually the violence that humans perform upon humans. And so that I think it's really important to give Tommy Simpson and an artist, you know, an artist of his long career and stature, who has evoked and instigated all kinds of wonderment through his use of imagery and his furniture making. I think it's important to give him his due. Well, maybe there's more to that than just bringing in disconnected imagery in a, as you said, a whimsical way.
One of the things that vexes me, I suppose, is that I suspect more under there, but Tommy doesn't talk about it. And so, you know, I can inflict content on anything, right? Let's do a 2-hour crit on this, you know, but I wonder about the intent and, you know, as you say, he's using language from such dark places. And so I wonder about it and what's going on there.
Mm.
But he doesn't talk about it.
As an artist who's worked in furniture yourself, maybe you can tell us why, you know, this is more, I think, indicative of the period in which Tommy has founded and continued his career, which was within American studio furniture craft.
Yeah, and to his credit, part of the reason that I thought of Tommy and Katie, and part of the reason that my heroes are people like Carlo Bugatti and Michael Cooper, is that everybody that I just named in their moment is entirely singular. They're not doing what anybody else is doing. And there's something so special about that again, it makes me wonder, you know, I wish I could kind of climb in Tommy's ear and look around in his brain during that time, because he's not doing, you know, put Tommy Simpson next to Wendell Castle and wonder what was happening there, right? And it's just, everybody tried to then be Wendell. Nobody tried to be Tommy. And Tommy didn't try to be anybody else. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I want to invite our viewers today to include your questions in the chat, or because there are so few of us today, maybe you can even unmute yourself and pipe up if you have a question for Scott about his talk or the works of Katie Hudnall and Tommy Simpson. I know that Nyce, I just want to mention Nyce's comment because Nyce is also an artist who works heavily in the field of drawing and is working on a project right now with the center where they've selected specific works from the collection and they're drawing or sort of drawing interpretation and imaginative responses to the works that they've selected. So Katie's work has now, and I'm sure you've given them more material to think about and ruminate on. Katie's work has really ignited Nyce's imagination. Nyce, you're muted.
I agreed. I'm not going to argue with that one. I am really liking Katie Hudnall's drawings. They kind of remind me of the kinds of drawings one would see in like a Shel Silverstein book, the kind of drawings that he did with his works. And I can see like the fairy tale element that goes with them, and how you mentioned Roald Dahl, and it just reminds me of when I read like things like James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and things like that. So those are good things to think of because they're such a, I think for at least several generations of children, they've been pretty much mainstays in their reading and also their consumption of art. And Harold and the Purple Crayon, exactly.
I think both of you touched on something that we didn't talk so much about, but the narratives that are evoked by, or encouraged, or maybe invited on behalf of the viewer or the user or the collector in the work of Katie and Tommy specifically. There's a kind of storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
It definitely is.
In fact, speaking of Harold and the Purple Crayon, I often picture Katie as just Harold.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
That's very sweet. I am so appreciative, Scott, of the depth and study that you've devoted to both of these artists. Certainly this deepens our understanding of both of these works in the center's collection, and we can't thank you enough for your passion and your energy and your thought.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. This is fun.
Thank you so much. So for our asynchronous viewers, you're able to see this talk and almost all of the other object lesson talks on the center's YouTube channel, as well as our microsite, thewoodshed.org. And you'll also be able to check it out on Facebook. And you're welcome to ask us any questions about the collection, or we invite you to contribute your thoughts as well, because the collection is here for you. And if you're here in the Philly area, I'll just remind you again that you can talk with Scott and interact with the Decency Project tomorrow afternoon, I think starting at 1 p.m., right, Scott?
I think noon.
Noon, as early as noon at Love Park at City Hall in Philly. So stop by, talk spoons, or anything else you want to talk about. Thank you so much, Scott. We really appreciate it. And everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend and be safe.